Hey everyone, and welcome to our very first game and toy hunt for this channel, and possibly the last, depending on how this goes. I know I enjoy going out every few weeks and checking out the stores around Indy here and seeing if there's any old retro games or figures from the 80s or something that I still collect here and there. And, I figured you guys might want to hang around with us when we do it. So first up here, we're going to Disc Replay, which is essentially the Indianapolis version of a pawn shop. The only thing that really separates them is that they don't sell jewelry or lawnmowers yet. I mean, that might change, but still they've got a decent selection of games and other stuff. Mostly, old 360 and PS3 games, stuff like that, but you do occasionally find this giant pile of Sega CD games or something else. Just always neat to see these laying around. Rebel Assault, which is a decent version of that. Pitfall, fun. And of course, Street Fighter the movie, which, pass. You've also got, Stellar Fire, and another copy of Lodestar, and Cliffhanger for the Sega CD. I know you guys had to buy something for the Sega CD, but really? Cliffhanger? Come on now. Also got Thunderstrike, Battle Corps, a core game, which is actually a really cool kind of 3D game. Sort of 3D game, I guess. It used the scaling and motion that the Sega CD provided the Sega Genesis to make a pretty cool little game. Always really wanted to play that, but the asking price for that one was just a little bit more than I wanted to pay. Also, it's a Sega CD game, and I'd have to buy a Sega CD. Besides that, you got your selection of PlayStation 1 games that are just hanging around everywhere. You got Panzer General, Big Box, Street Fighter Alpha, Doom. But as you can see in the background, I mean, you're really just getting tons and tons of old sports games. Got this stack of import Sega Saturn games, which I'm not really sure what any of them are. Got Sega Rally there, of course, and Neon Genesis. What is that, D? I don't really know all that stuff. Again, just a ton of old sports games and stuff like that everyone bought back in the PlayStation days, and that you can now buy for about 25 cents. Over in the Super NES cases, though, we've got a few decent Super NES games that are way overpriced. We've got Mario RPG back there, Super Castlevania, Top Gear, that's a great game. Down below, we've actually got some new old games. These games are actually new, and they've been retrofitted to run on your Super NES. So, I mean, these are kind of cool. I don't really know too much about them besides, there's Hyper Light Drifter. And that's pretty neat to see. Of course, you've got the NES collection of junk here that no one really wants. And over on the other case, there's a few toys, stuff like that. They don't really have too much of that stuff here. Five Nights at Freddy's that no one wants, and some other stuff. And I really think that's going to do it for our first place, so we're going to move on to our second location. Next up is the Exchange, and this is definitely more what Disc Replay used to be. I mean, really, they only deal with games and some music and a few movies, but mostly it's a bunch of older games. In the first case here, we've got a Super Famicom for $75, and in box as well for $110, but really, most import stuff doesn't go for much around here. Over on the console case, we've got every console you've ever seen for the rest of your life forever, including a PlayStation Mini. Always kind of want one of those, but not for $40. And I think that's kind of what you'll see that's common in most of these places that we go to, is everything's a bit overpriced. Most places know what they have now, so you'll see stuff like Zelda for $30, Mario All-Stars for $25, Mega Man X for $25. Just, really about $10 or $15 more than what they probably should be priced at. Over in the Genesis case, we've got, Sonic and Knuckles for $20. That's not too bad. Not really much. Just a lot of sports games that you'd probably find in most of these places. Jurassic Park in the box for $8. This is your one chance to own Jurassic Park for $8 complete. Down the bottom, though, we've got some 32X games. We've got Mortal Kombat 2 and Star Wars and Virtual Racing. All of those are probably about the best 32X games you can get, plus some, standard Game Gear games. Never saw this before. This is actually a CD backup RAM card for the Sega CD. I don't know. And of course, we've got the Saturn import games that you can't really look through because everything's really behind glass in this place. But that's pretty much it for the Exchange right here. We're going to go ahead and move on to our next location, which is going to be something just a little bit different. Next up, we've got a place called the Toy Box, and we didn't really go inside this time, but we're going to check out this sidewalk sale that they've got. Just a bunch of tubs of toys and stuff to dig through. Everything is like $1 to $5, including this amazing Shack Attack Jammin' Giant. In case you forgot that Shack was that popular from back in the day. Again, just tubs full of random stuff that you just really have to dig through. Like this Star Wars Episode 1 watch collection, which I came damn close to buying because I need to wear Anakin's face on my wrist. What do we got here? We got Shadows of the Empire, if anybody remembers that. We got Darth Vader versus Prince Zizor? I never did. I always thought it was kind of cool though. The Rat King, and just thrown in a box full of random shit. Actually, a lot of this reminds me of back in the day when you'd go to a yard sale for a family that had a bunch of kids that were growing out of their toys. And they would just be tubs full of this kind of stuff. And it was just always fun to dig through. Of course, this Urkel lunchbox makes an appearance. And man, just ridiculous some of the stuff you'd actually find around here. Including a copy of Three Ninjas Kick Back. Again, this is just supposed to be toys, but we have a VCR or a VHS cassette of Three Ninjas Kick Back. That's required viewing for anyone that hasn't watched it ever. I really wanted to actually dig through a lot more of this place because it really, I mean, there was just so much stuff, but when we were going out, today it was just so hot. It was like 100 degrees and you could feel every one of those degrees, especially when you're out in the middle of a parking lot digging through tubs of old toys. It's still neat to see, and they did have some new stuff like this Assassin's Creed thing. Also had Mario and Luigi there, but we're gonna go ahead and finish off this location and get back to the gaming and at our next location. Next up, we've got Game Exchange, not to be confused with The Exchange. This store is mostly just video games and a few DVDs, but the majority of it is just old video games, including this rack of Sega CD games. None of these, though, are anywhere near as exciting as the ones we saw earlier, including the likes of Tomcat Alley, another Tomcat Alley, and yes, another Tomcat Alley. And 3 prize fighters right next to it. I can't believe any of you ever bought these games. Why did you do this to yourself? Just blows my mind sometimes. Over in the other case, we've got a few things here worth looking at, one of which is not the Animals for the Sega CD. I'd never heard of that one. Return Fire for Sega Saturn. That's a really good game, but I never played the Saturn version of it. And up top, we've got some Jaguar games. We've got Raiden and Doom. So 2 of the best games you could probably buy for the Jaguar sitting right there for about $50 a piece. It's not too bad of a price for those. Usually any Jaguar games you find in places like this are like ridiculously overpriced. It's actually crazy. Over here in this case, we've got some PlayStation 2 games. We've got Bloody Roar 3, that's a great game. Don't hardly ever see that one anywhere. Got Silent Hill 3, and I'm not quite sure why that's considered rare these days. It seems like it's gotten, like the prices went way up. I thought everyone had that game. Over here we've got some PlayStation games which probably shouldn't even be in a case, like R4 and Final Fantasy VIII. Got some Johnny Bazooka Tone, which I'm pretty sure I'm the only one that ever played that game. It's kind of neat, kind of fun little game. Die Hard Trilogy, which, according to the dislikes on that podcast I uploaded, we're in the minority of people who actually don't like that game. Wing Commander, not a bad selection, but a lot of this stuff is way overpriced. What do we got down here? Got some more PlayStation games, and if you can see in the back, that is The Adventures of Sir Lomax for $110. Now, I can actually understand the pricing on that one because it's so rare. It is so rare, and it's a great little 2D game. If you ever get the chance to play it and not pay out the ass for it, it's great. But I think that's going to do it for this location. Really not much else besides just a bunch of standard NES games that we've all seen, like Wheel of Fortune, Jack Nicklaus Golf. But we're actually going to head over to our last location, so, meet us there. And finally is Gizmo's Galleria, and this one is definitely one of those antique/flea market kind of places, so you never really know what you're going to find, since a lot of these booths can just be filled with the most random stuff imaginable. You know, like over here, we've got a booth that's just got some stuff on shelves and in the floor. There's a bunch of stereos in this booth, a bunch of crap on the walls over here, some comic book stuff, Coca-Cola, sports memorabilia, some Indian stuff back there, and this terrifying masquerade mask. Back here behind the creepy emoji bed, though, we've got a few figurines and toys hanging around. Got these old Universal Mummy figures that I always kind of wanted, but not for 40 bucks. And then we've got some newer stuff that really isn't my thing, since, you know, there's really no reason to go to a flea market when you can just find this stuff pretty much anywhere these days. You know, like Marvel, Stranger Things, Joker, you know, all this stuff that you can find in a FYE in the mall or at Target, so there's really not much of a reason to go hunting around and finding this stuff. And it's always fun just to be walking around and turn a corner and hey, there's Adventure of Link, or the Adventure of Link for 20 bucks. You know, this booth isn't even about games. It doesn't have toys or anything. It's just a bunch of clothes. You know, you got Sonic the Black Knight, all this other stuff. So, you know, it's fun to go around. You can actually go in a lot of these places and never find anything, but you know, you would do occasionally just find some neat stuff to fuck around with, like, you know, PS3 Destiny. But over here, we definitely found a cool little thing that really caught my eye immediately, and that is this booth with this awesome GameCube kiosk just randomly sitting in the back here. And I actually kind of freaked out about that, but it's unfortunately not for sale, at least not for anything below $2,000. But it's still really cool to see. I really, you know, as a kid, I was super excited about playing these in stores since I usually had the newest games, and it's kind of awesome. As for the games themselves, you know, he's got some Silent Hill 4, and there's Silent Hill 3 again. You know, I guess that's the thing. Ruiner for PS4, I haven't actually heard of that game. I'm not sure why it's behind a glass case. Battletoads vs. Double Dragons, Doom 64, not sure why that's in the case either. And down here we've got Turtles Tournament Fighters for $120 for the NES, that's ridiculous to me. I didn't know that game was that rare. Might actually look that up after this and see if they don't know what they're talking about. The rest of the shelves, you know, you've kind of got your basic stuff that you can flip through. Some N64 games, bunch of sports stuff, you know, NHL. Wait, there's Blast Corps, that's a great game. I actually really like that game. Greatest arcade hits, Midway arcade hits. Didn't even know that was on the N64. Nightmare Creatures, that's great. Elmo's Letter Adventure, getting that one. And some other stuff that, you know, Bass Hunter 64, I'm sure Billy would be excited for that one. Not really too much else though. And I think that's going to actually do it for this trip though. I mean, Gizmos was pretty cool to wander around in, but really that's about the only booth that had anything of interest, especially that awesome GameCube kiosk here. But we're going to see what we actually ended up buying here in just a second. So at the end of the day, we ended up with a few Switch games. We got Doom, Mario and Rabbids, and Mario Odyssey. I think all of that came up to be about 80 bucks. On the retro side of thing, we ended up with Raiden for the Jaguar and Fighting Force 64 for some reason. I'm not too sure why. Got Odama for the GameCube, never played it, but seemed neat. I got Cliffhanger for Sega CD because of course you gotta have Cliffhanger, and Lodestar for the Sega CD. It's just, you can't punish yourself enough, I guess. Got Dream Master for the NES, and just an Armor King Pop. So that's gonna do it. Anyways, thanks guys for hanging around with us. We do this every few weeks, so if you'd like to see more of these videos and some of the stupid stuff we find, let us know down in the comments, and I'll throw some more up. In the meantime though, thanks for hanging around with us. It's been fun, and we'll see you next time.